Welcome back. This is our last video in the Home Buying for Beginners Part 2 course. We have now discussed everything leading up to closing day, but today it's time to get into what exactly to expect on this day, besides walking out with the keys to your new home. First things first, you need to appropriately pick a date for closing day. This can take longer than expected, maybe even over an hour, so make sure you pick a time slot that accommodates a larger window. On the day of closing, there will be some other people at the table. Here are some people that you can expect to see. One is the seller and their agent. You may also see a representative from the title company. You will see any attorneys if you or the seller have one. Sometimes your lender may even be there. An agent will be there to facilitate and conduct the whole meeting. At this point, you probably realize that this process comes with many documents, and this doesn't differ on closing day. On closing day, you will receive and be expected to sign a deed, a bill of sales, and transfer tax deductions. The deed transfers the property from the seller to the buyer. The bill of sales transfers any personal property from the seller to the buyer. These documents will need to be signed by both parties and are legally binding documents. You're not done yet. There are also some documents that the buyer will need to sign for the lender. The first one being the mortgage note. This note promises that the buyer will repay the loan to the lender. Next is the actual mortgage document. This states that the loan will be put up as collateral if the buyer is not able to repay the loan. Then you have the loan application. This needs to be reviewed by the buyer one last time for accuracy. And finally, you have the loan estimate and closing disclosure, which was discussed in detail in a previous lesson. It is crucial to be aware and understand these documents prior to closing day. In Home Buying for Beginners Part 1, we discussed many of these documents in depth. I recommend reviewing these documents prior to coming to the table and asking your lender if any questions come up. Lastly, as we discussed in our last lesson, there are many fees you will be expected to pay at the closing table. Be prepared to pay these fees out of pocket on closing day. They should be disclosed to you prior to closing day in the closing disclosure. All in all, come to the table ready to meet some people, understanding the documents you will be signing and reviewing, and ready to pay your closing fees. The goal is always to build your knowledge, so you are prepared and comfortable coming to the table. The last step is for you to get your keys and move on in. Thank you for joining us in Home Buying for Beginners Part 2.